Welcome to Furniture Industry News. Today is April 30th, 2026, and I'm glad you're here. It's been one of those weeks in the furniture industry where a lot of things happened at once, and if you step back, there's actually a very clear story forming underneath all of it. Let's start with High Point Market, because that's always the big temperature check for our industry. On the surface, attendance was basically flat, down about 1% compared to last October. That headline might sound a little underwhelming, but when you look closer, it tells a much more interesting story. Large retailer attendance was down about 4%, but international attendance ticked up slightly, and more than 1,200 new companies registered. There were also nearly 200 new exhibitors. And maybe more importantly, the feedback from people who were there was overwhelmingly positive. What stood out wasn't the volume of traffic, it was the quality. Attendees described seeing the right kind of buyer. People who showed up weren't browsing casually, they were there with purpose. That lines up with what retailers are seeing back home, too. Traffic might be down, but conversion rates are holding, or even improving. Customers are walking in more prepared, more informed, and further along in their decision-making. So the takeaway here isn't that the market is shrinking, it's that it's becoming more selective. Fewer people, but better buyers. Now, that theme carries right into what retailers themselves are saying about how they're driving traffic. There was a survey of 22 independent retailers, and while you might expect a wide range of answers, the reality is they're converging in some pretty clear ways. Yes, a lot of them are leaning heavily into social media. Some have shifted almost entirely away from traditional television. Platforms like Facebook and TikTok are getting a lot of attention. But here's the interesting part. It's not really about the channel, it's about the message. The retailers who seem to be performing best right now aren't trying to reinvent themselves. They're doubling down on what they already do well. Clear value propositions, simple, repeatable messaging. Things like everyday low prices, no-hassle experiences, or leaning into a long-standing reputation for customization.
There is also a shift toward more video content, helping customers actually see and understand products instead of just looking at static images. And one consistent point came up. If your marketing doesn't give customers a reason to act, it's not going to move the needle. At the end of the day, the retailers holding steady right now aren't doing anything radically new. They're just executing the basics with more clarity and consistency. Now let's shift to Wayfair, because their latest moves are worth paying attention to. They reported first quarter revenue growth of 7.4%, reaching about $2.93 billion. Their profitability improved as well, with their best first quarter margin in 5 years. But the real story isn't the numbers, it's what they're doing with physical stores. Wayfair opened a 150,000 square foot store in Atlanta and has more locations planned. And here's the key. They're not treating these stores as experiments. They're calling them profitable tools for growing both their customer base and how much each customer spends. That's a big shift. For years, the conversation was online versus brick-and-mortar. That conversation is basically over. Wayfair is telling us very clearly that physical retail matters, and not just for branding, but for real, profitable growth. For traditional retailers, this is both validation and a warning. It confirms that in-person shopping still plays a critical role in furniture, but it also means a major digital player is stepping directly onto your turf, backed by an ecosystem most retailers can't match. So the question becomes, what do you offer that they can't easily replicate? Local relationships, trust, service, and real human interaction, those things matter more than ever now. Let's talk about Ethan Allen next, because their latest quarter reflects something broader happening across the industry. Their sales were down about 4.8% year over year, and margins tightened. Operating income dropped significantly. But here's the part that deserves attention. Their operating cash flow actually increased, and they remain debt-free with strong cash reserves. This isn't just an Ethan Allen story. It's a category story. Demand is softer, especially for discretionary purchases, but companies that are disciplined operationally are still generating cash and staying stable.
That's a critical lesson right now. When revenue is under pressure, cash flow management becomes everything. Now, another big development that hasn't gotten as much attention, but probably should, is around tariffs. The Supreme Court ruled earlier this year that certain tariffs collected under emergency powers were illegal. As a result, businesses that paid those tariffs, over $160 billion in total, are now eligible for refunds. A new system launched on April 20th to process those refunds, and once approved, companies could receive that money within 60 to 90 days. But before anyone celebrates too much, there's a catch. A new 10% global tariff is already in place, and additional trade investigations are underway. So while refunds are coming, uncertainty isn't going away. For furniture companies, which rely heavily on imports, this creates a unique moment. There's an opportunity to recover some cash, but also a need to rethink sourcing, pricing, and inventory strategies before the next wave of policy changes hits. Now, let's look at the consumer side, because this is where things get really interesting. The Consumer Confidence Index ticked up slightly in April to 92.8. On the surface, that sounds positive, but when you dig deeper, the Expectations Index, which measures how people feel about the future, came in at 72.2. That's well below the level typically associated with economic confidence. In simple terms, people feel okay about today, but they're uncertain about what's coming next. And that matters a lot for furniture, because this is a category people can delay. If they're unsure about the future, they don't cancel purchases, they postpone them. There's also a clear demographic divide. Confidence is declining among older consumers, the group that traditionally drives big-ticket furniture purchases. Meanwhile, younger consumers are becoming more optimistic. So now you've got two very different buyer mindsets in the same market. One is cautious and hesitant, the other is more confident and entering the market for the first time. And here's the challenge. Most furniture marketing is still aimed at the cautious group. If you're not adjusting your approach to connect with younger buyers, you're likely missing one of the few segments that's actually gaining confidence right now. When you step back and connect all of these dots, a pattern starts to emerge.
The industry isn't collapsing. It's going through a qualification phase. Traffic is down, both at market and in stores. Consumer confidence is uneven. Costs and trade policies are still shifting. But the customers who are showing up are more serious. They're more informed, and they're more ready to buy. That changes the game. It means success isn't about getting more people through the door. It's about being ready for the right people when they walk in. There are a couple of additional shifts worth noting too. Amazon is moving Prime Day into June this year, which compresses the promotional calendar. That creates a tighter window for furniture retailers to establish their own summer promotions before Amazon dominates consumer attention. And across retail more broadly, there are signs that pricing strategies are becoming more personalized. Different customers may start seeing different offers or levels of urgency for the same product. That hasn't fully arrived in furniture yet, but it's something to watch. So where does all of this leave us? The category is under pressure, no question, but it's not broken. The buyers are fewer, but they're better. The businesses that are performing well right now aren't waiting for conditions to improve. They're getting sharper. They're getting clearer about who they serve and why they matter, and they're executing the fundamentals at a higher level. At the end of the day, the floor still matters, the conversation still matters, and the ability to build trust in real time has never been more valuable. That's the real story this week. Thanks for spending a few minutes with me today. If you're finding these updates helpful, be sure to subscribe so you can stay on top of what's happening in the furniture industry each week.